location is as good a place to start as any. If you grow up, as I did, near the beach in Southern California, and you decide to leave that to live in St. Louis, Missouri, you might think that you'd find yourself sort of alone. You might think that you'd never run into someone you knew from high school, never talk to somebody who understands the value of a good view. But believe it or not, we have a whole community of Angelinos, although we would never actually call ourselves that, in St. Louis. So a handful of people I went to high school with even are there. So one person that I kind of vaguely knew growing up moved to St. Louis, and we became good friends. And I told him when I was in the process of creating the nonprofit that became December, and a few weeks later he called me to ask a few more questions about it. It turned out that his cousin Buzz, who had moved to St. Louis a few years before to become Dean of the Art School at Washington University in St. Louis, had founded a literary journal in the 70s in Chicago, where December was based at the time. His was a magazine of writing all by artists called White Walls. But Buzz remembered December. He was completely familiar with it, what it had been, and it took just one lunch together for Buzz to become December's art editor. It was an important step because visual art has always been a significant piece of December's presence. Words and images belong together. They feed each other and enhance each other, and when used thoughtfully and purposefully, elevate each other to places neither could reach on its own. So I leave to Buzz all of the selection and all of the decisions about the art that's appearing in December. And because I just sit back and wait, sometimes I wait a little longer than I would like to, but I sit back and I wait to see what he picks, and then I can say, I think our art is really amazing. And it doesn't get any better than the art that's going to be in our next issue, which is at the printer right now, and will be in the mail by the first week of May. So when Buzz first shared with me some of the images of work by Los Angeles artist Alexandra Grant, all I could think of was how fast could we get in touch with her and get her work in the next issue. So in the past few months, I've been emailing with Alexandra. She introduced us to Lace and helped us pull this event together. And I paid some attention to some of the many projects that she's involved with. And now I can say that while I've been a fan of her work from the get-go, now I'm an even bigger fan of Alexandra the person. Her work, which is often large in both scale and scope, includes a lot of language. She's worked closely with and collaborated with writers, again demonstrating the symbiotic relationship between images and words. I'm truly sorry that our spring and summer issue isn't here quite yet, but Alexandra created a series of prints from that original group of work titled Century of the South as a fundraiser for inner city arts. And in that group of prints is on that wall. These are much smaller versions of what are very, very, very large pieces. But I'd encourage you all to take a look at them. Darcy, is Darcy here somewhere? Darcy from Inner City Arts, well, hopefully she will be here. So these pieces were created as a fundraiser for Inner City Arts, and they're indicative of the work that we'll have in our next issue of Alexandra's. And as a special treat, Alexandra is here tonight, even though she was originally supposed to be away in Mexico, where she grew up, but I'm happy that she's here today. So it only seems fitting that we ask Alexandra to say just a few words about her art, about December's art, and the connection between art and words.
So as you can see, I've prepared my notes. First, I want to say thank you to Sarah and the Lace team for hosting us, to Gianna for everything you've done to breathe life into what is a very sacred space for me. I am more than a painter, more than an artist, I'm a fan, and you use this word, so I love writing. I love reading a book. I love reading, and you know, on any surface, I'm not biased, whether it's an iPad or, but as a visual artist, look at this space where I and my peers have the opportunity to display our work. We can exchange images so easily, and writers need spaces too, that promote their work, that value their work, and I have pretty much given my whole career as a visual artist to creating unique, intimate exchanges with writers. I've had the great privilege of, actually my career started in the writing world. Some of you are familiar with the And Now Writers Conferences. I presented my work early on with a collaborator named Michael Joyce. But I've worked with a French philosopher, Lancy Sue, Keanu Reeves, which many of you don't know, he's a great writer. And I'm working with another young writer, Kate Durbin. So I'm very interested in, because I take up, and my work takes up real physical space, what I can do as a visual artist to create these other spaces for wonderful, intimate exchanges with writers. And I come to them always as a fan. So it really is out of incredible appreciation that, Gianna, you're creating a space in December for more of these exchanges between visual artists and writers. This is a wonderful space. We need more of them in the world. And I just have one anecdote, which is another fandom. So when I was starting off my career, I went to CCA in San Francisco, and I said to my teachers, all I want to do is, mine that line where an image becomes a text or text becomes an image. It seemed to me that if I could imagine doing one thing for the rest of my life, apart from eating and sleeping, it would be reading. So I thought, what better source than literature for my work? And everyone said, do you know the work of Buzz Spector? And so I looked him up, and I was a fan of his work for, about 15 years until I was introduced to him in person, and we absolutely hit it off. So it's this amazing pleasure when you are drawn. There's something about the DNA of a text, the DNA of an image. If you're drawn to it, it often happens, and we discovered this today, that you'll actually like the human being behind it. It's not always the case, but it really was with Buzz. So I'm honored to be, in the 4th issue of December, and to celebrate and with you how we can, as community members of writers and visual artists, more spaces for experimentation, for celebration, and we can do that together. So I hope that you'll support both Lace and December by becoming subscribers. I know I need to do that. I'm good. This is a good pitch.
Wow,
I know. So I'm going to go subscribe in the back, and I hope you'll join me. But I really look forward to hearing the writers, and I'm going to let you introduce them.
Thanks.
So thank you all for being here.